For the first time in nearly 2 months, we are seeing Republican Ken Paxton ahead in the race for the United States Senate seat out of Texas. And this is very significant because for the past 2 months, we've been looking poll after poll after poll that has James Talarico leading this race against Ken Paxton. And this would be significant if James Talarico won this race in Texas. It would be a key pickup for Democrats across the state, as well as a key pickup for Democrats across the nation trying to control the Senate after the 2026 midterms. Now, with all of this in mind, it's important to note that this is the first poll conducted in the past 2 months that has had Ken Paxton ahead. This poll is also only has Ken Paxton leading by 1 percentage point to James Talarico. And then when we take a look at the governor's race out of Texas, it's a similar situation but slightly different in favor of Abbott. Greg Abbott leading Gina Hinojosa by 4 percentage points across the state of Texas in this Emerson College poll. Now, I bring all of this to your attention because if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know that we've been talking about this Texas Senate race for a number of months now. And because we've been talking about it so much, it's important to take a look at a reliable pollster who has Ken Paxton ahead. Now, one other thing that I took note of before filming this video on this Emerson College poll is the fact that voters under the age of 20 or under the age of 50, my apologies, are breaking for Talarico by 15 percentage points. That's 53 to 38%. While those over 50 break for Paxton by 11 points, 53 to 42%. So James Talarico is also banking on the idea that young people will turn out this November. Those under 50 will turn out this November in his favor. And if that doesn't happen, it could spell major alarm signs for the Democratic Party, not only in Texas, but also in other states where they're hoping to capitalize off younger voters. Now, with all of this in mind, I've mentioned time and time again in this video that this is the first time since June 19th through the 27th that Ken Paxton is at least tied in a poll. The last time that he was leading was June 21st, and that was leading by 2 percentage points back then. But today, we got this poll out from Emerson College, and Ken Paxton is again leading in this race to be the next senator from the state of Texas. Now, do I expect this to stick? Do I expect Ken Paxton to just grow this margin from here on out? No. I think this race continues to be closely watched and a competitive race going into the November elections. But it's important because Emerson College is fairly considered a reliable pollster, and therefore it's important to take a look at this poll conducted. A sample size of 1,000 likely voters, margin of error 3%. And Ken Paxton leading this race by a percentage point. Of course, also important to note that throughout this race, Talarico has been leading in polls that are also considered reliable pollsters. If you take a look on your screen, you'll see that anything bolded is normally traditionally considered an A-rated pollster. So someone who is reliable and trustworthy to look at. The others are a little bit of a mix of both. Sometimes they're really reliable, sometimes they get it wrong, and that's really with polling in general in today's world, but important to note nonetheless. But Talarico certainly has led his fair share of polling, even through those of reliable pollsters. We've seen a Fox News poll out that had Talarico up 3 percentage points. That was just a couple of weeks ago. We've also seen time after time Talarico +2, +5, +2, +4, +2, +3, until today Paxton +1 as of today, this race for Texas Senate. Now, if we take a look back at the history of Texas, we go back to 2024, we'll see that Ted Cruz won the race for Texas Senate against Colin Allred by 8.5 percentage points. Back that up to 2018, Ted Cruz won it by 2.6%. Of course, this was a Democratic environment, 2024, a Republican environment, but still, Ted Cruz only winning by 8.5%, the same ballot, Trump winning by 13.7%. So certainly noteworthy that there were a fair share of voters who decided to vote for Colin Allred and also decided to vote for Donald Trump in the November election just 2 years ago. If we date this back to 2020, when John Cornyn was up for re-election back then, this seat, of course, Cornyn not running for re-election, lost his primary race, but won that race by 9.6% on the same ballot that Joe Biden won across the nation, and became the next president at that point. Cornyn winning this race by 9.6%, date that back 2020, Biden almost really, and in a lot of ways, had an opportunity here to flip the state of Texas. Trump only winning it by 5.6%. You go 4 years later, he wins it by 13.7%. So important there as well. But if we see a similar situation to that of 2018, where Ted Cruz, of course, not a very popular figure amongst the state, and had an opportunity to lose here to Beto O'Rourke, but polling also didn't predict this race to be as close as it was. I want to remind you guys of that as well. We're seeing polling in this race for Texas Senate this year that's already predicting a close race. 8 years ago, my apologies, we did not see that. Ted Cruz was time and time again leading in polling, ultimately won the election, but only by 2.5 percentage points. I've said this time and time again, I also think that Ken Paxton is a worse candidate than Ted Cruz, and if that's the case, then we could expect Ken Paxton to perform worse than Ted Cruz did back in 2018. Not only that, President Trump is disapproved of by a larger margin today than he was back in 2018 at this point in his presidency. So a lot of contributing factors and a lot to look at that's going to play into this race, and stuff that really has a major impact on elections across the board and who might have an opportunity to win. Do Republicans win this race yet again, or do Democrats have an opportunity here? That's going to be the question that we'll have leading into the November elections, because ultimately we can predict, we can look at data, but at the end of the day, it's going to depend on who turns out in these races and what that means for Republicans and what that means for Democrats this November. So, with all of this in mind, and with the historical odds stuff pointed out, Ted Cruz winning this race just a couple of years ago by 8.5 percentage points, more disapproved of type candidate on the same ballot, Trump winning it by over 13 percentage points. What do you guys think? I mean, do you guys believe that this race also, like I do, is extremely close, or do you guys believe that there could be a shift up and maybe it's not as close as we all think it is? Maybe Republicans actually win this race by a larger margin than anybody's expecting. What do you guys think? I'm curious to see. Another thing I also wanted to point out is in the Vote Hub margin, we talk about this a lot on the channel, is the fact that Ken Paxton now has overtaken James Talarico by 0.1 percentage point across the state of Texas on the average on Vote Hub, leaving Democrats with 51 to Republicans 49. Democrats flip North Carolina, Maine, Ohio, and Alaska in this current prediction format from Vote Hub. Republicans at a 53% chance of controlling the United States Senate, but of course one poll doesn't decide the election, and one poll doesn't flip the trajectory of Texas. It just makes us take a deeper look at it, because ultimately, if Ken Paxton is starting to perform better as we head into the November elections, can Talarico meet that, exceed that, and ultimately still have an opportunity to perform better and better as the months go on? We'll have to see as the days and weeks come closer to the November elections on how Talarico performs overall and what this race will look like going forward. So, with all of that in mind, again, I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys believe that this Emerson College poll is very important in that Ken Paxton actually is now leading a poll for the first time in 2 months? Or do you guys believe that this poll is kind of an outlier almost, and that Talarico, while down on this poll, is still ahead if the election was held today? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I love reading through those and replying to you all. If you haven't already, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your post notifications so you can ensure that you're seeing every single video that I put out. And if you haven't already, like I said, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys again so much for watching.